It was past midnight when the rain began to fall over the quiet hills of Surrey. The grand lights of the Reynolds mansion dimmed one by one, leaving only a soft amber glow in the east wing. Inside, Alexander Reynolds, a man worth hundreds of millions, sat alone by the fire, staring into the flames as if they held answers money could not buy. He was 53, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and impeccably dressed even in solitude. His company, Reynolds Textiles, was the largest clothing exporter in the UK. But tonight, there were no meetings, no contracts, no applause. Only silence, and the faint echo of a voice that used to fill the house, his late wife, Margaret. It had been 5 years since she passed, and yet her absence lingered like a shadow. The mansion was vast, but emptier than ever. As he sipped his brandy, a strange thought crossed his mind. He thought about Rahim, his old servant, the man who had served the family for over 15 years. A quiet, humble immigrant from Pakistan, Rahim had always greeted him with a smile and worked tirelessly without complaint. Alexander barely noticed him anymore. The man cleaned his cars, prepared his meals, and quietly left by evening to return to the small servant quarters outside the estate. But tonight, something felt wrong. Rahim hadn't shown up for 3 days. No message, no call. Alexander had asked the butler to check, but he said Rahim's house lights had been off. Maybe he had gone away for some family emergency. Yet, a small unease grew in the millionaire's chest. He remembered how Rahim always asked to leave early on Sundays, to visit someone. Alexander had never cared to ask who. But now, in the dead of night, curiosity and guilt began to stir. At 1 a.m., Alexander stood up, put on his raincoat, and stepped outside. The cold rain hit his face like needles, and he walked toward the back of the property, toward the small, dimly lit servant's house behind the stables. For the first time, he realized he had never even stepped inside Rahim's home. Not once in 15 years. He approached the wooden door and knocked softly. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. So, driven by a strange impulse, part concern, part guilt, he turned the handle. It creaked open. The inside was dark, silent, and colder than the night outside. A single candle flickered weakly on a table. The air smelled faintly of medicine and damp clothes. Alexander took a step in, and froze. In the corner of the tiny room, on an old bed covered in worn sheets, lay a small boy, around 9 years old, sleeping peacefully. His face was pale, but angelic. His chest rose and fell softly. Beside the bed sat Rahim, head bowed, hands clasped tightly as if in prayer. Alexander's breath caught. Rahim looked different. His usual calm smile was gone. His eyes were red, his cheeks streaked with tears. When he saw his employer standing in the doorway, Rahim stood quickly, startled. "Sir, Mr. Reynolds, you shouldn't be here. Please." Alexander raised a hand. "It's all right, Rahim. I was worried. You've been gone for days." Rahim hesitated, eyes full of guilt and exhaustion. I am sorry, sir. I didn't mean to worry you. I had some trouble." Alexander's eyes moved to the boy again. Who was that child? For a long moment, Rahim didn't speak. His lips trembled. Then he said softly, "My son, sir." "Your son?" Alexander frowned. "You never told me you had a family." Rahim smiled faintly, but sadness clouded his face. "Because I did not want pity, sir. And, because my life has been divided between survival and silence." Alexander stepped closer. "Is he sick?" Rahim nodded slowly. "He has a heart condition. The doctors say he needs surgery soon, or..." His voice broke. "He won't make it." The words hung heavy in the air. Alexander felt something inside him twist painfully. He looked around the small house. Broken furniture, leaking roof, a single blanket to keep out the cold. This was how his most loyal servant lived. While he slept every night on silk sheets. "Rahim," he said quietly, "why didn't you tell me? I could have helped." Rahim shook his head quickly. "No, sir. I could not ask for that. You already gave me work when no one else would. That was enough blessing for me." Alexander looked at him with disbelief. A man who earned billions had never bothered to ask about the life of someone who had served him daily for years. The shame was suffocating. He took a deep breath and said, "Rahim, from tomorrow, your son gets treatment. I'll arrange everything. Tears welled in Rahim's eyes, but he bowed his head, trembling. You are too kind, sir. But please, don't pity me. I only ask for prayers. Alexander shook his head. No, Rahim. This isn't pity. It's debt. For the first time in years, the millionaire felt truly human. But as he turned to leave, something caught his eye, a small wooden box on the table. Inside, among a few coins and papers, was a photograph. It was of Margaret, Alexander's late wife, smiling gently while handing Rahim's little boy a toy. Alexander's heart stopped. Where did you get this? He whispered. Rahim looked down. She knew, sir. She met him once. She used to help me secretly. The room spun. The millionaire's throat tightened. His wife had known. She had helped this man's family, quietly, humbly, while he, the so-called master of the house, hadn't even noticed. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Alexander Reynolds began to cry. For several minutes, Alexander couldn't move. The small wooden photo frame trembled in his hand as he stared at the image. Margaret, smiling, crouched beside a little boy holding a red toy car. The same boy who now lay asleep only a few feet away, breathing faintly, fighting for life. He felt his knees weaken. He sank into the nearest chair. How long? He whispered hoarsely. How long had she been helping you, Rahim? Rahim lowered his eyes, his hands twisting nervously. Almost 6 years, sir. Since the day your wife saw me walking home in the rain. Alexander blinked. 6 years. That was before she passed. Rahim nodded slowly. Yes, sir. She saw me carrying medicine from the charity clinic. She followed me to this house one evening. I was ashamed, afraid she would think I was stealing from you. But instead, she came in, brought food, clothes, and toys for my son. She told me not to tell you. Said you were too burdened with the company, and with her illness. Alexander's chest tightened. She was helping you behind my back. She said you'd feel guilty, Rahim said quietly. She didn't want you to feel like you failed anyone. A tear slid down Alexander's face. She always thought of others first. He set the frame down gently, staring at the candlelight flickering over his wife's face in the photo. Rahim looked away, uncomfortable at seeing his powerful employer's emotions unravel. Sir, I will manage somehow. My boy is strong. Maybe God will help. Alexander turned toward the boy again. The child looked peaceful, unaware of the storm raging around him. What's his name? He asked. Amir, sir. Amir, Alexander repeated softly. He looks like he could be my grandson. Rahim smiled faintly. Your wife used to say the same. She said Amir had eyes like yours. That simple sentence shattered what little control Alexander had left. He leaned forward, pressing his palms against his face, and sobbed silently. The echo of his wife's laughter filled his mind, the warmth she carried wherever she went. He remembered how, even while battling cancer, she had insisted on donating anonymously to charities, visiting orphanages, and taking care of the workers' children. And he, Alexander Reynolds, the man everyone envied, had been too busy chasing contracts, flying across continents, measuring life only in profits and achievements. Now he saw the truth. His wife had lived richer than he ever had. The next morning, the storm had passed. Pale sunlight crept through the cracks of the servant's window. Alexander hadn't gone home. He had stayed there the whole night, sitting quietly beside Rahim and the sleeping boy. At dawn, Amir woke up weakly and looked around. Papa, who is that man? Rahim smiled gently. That's Mr. Reynolds, my boss. He came to visit. Amir blinked, curious. He looks sad. Alexander chuckled softly through tired eyes. You're very observant, young man. Amir tilted his head. Did I do something wrong? Alexander shook his head. No, Amir. You did everything right. You just reminded me of someone very dear. The boy smiled faintly. Mama. Alexander's breath caught. He looked at Rahim in confusion. Rahim nodded sadly. His mother passed when he was a baby. Alexander's heart broke all over again. I see. You're a brave little man, Amir. Amir's voice was barely a whisper. Papa says brave people smile even when they're hurting. Alexander's lips trembled. He's a wise man, your father. The boy's eyes lit up. Do you know my papa works for a very rich man? One day, I'll buy papa a big house like his boss has. The innocence of the statement pierced Alexander like a blade. He reached forward, placing a hand gently on Amir's head. And one day, young man, you will. Rahim looked away, tears forming. He knew the promise in Alexander's voice wasn't empty. Later that morning, Alexander returned to his mansion. He walked through the same corridors that had once felt grand and majestic, but now, they looked hollow, lifeless. He stopped in the study, where Margaret's old journal still sat on a shelf untouched since her death. He opened it. The pages were filled with her neat handwriting, lists of names, places, notes about people she'd helped. And there, written in the middle of a page, underlined twice, were the words. Greater than, Rahim's boy, Amir. Kind eyes. Needs heart surgery soon. Must make sure Alexander helps him if I can't. His hand trembled as he touched her handwriting. She had known she wouldn't live long enough to keep her promise. And she had trusted him, even from beyond the grave, to fulfill it. He closed the book, his eyes burning. He had spent his life building empires, yet his wife's last wish was simply to save a servant's child. He made a decision. That evening, Alexander called his private doctor, booked an emergency appointment at the city's best children's hospital, and arranged an ambulance to pick up Amir and Rahim the next morning. He personally signed every paper, no hesitation, no delay. As he hung up the phone, he whispered to the photo of his wife on the desk. Margaret, I'll finish what you started. But little did Alexander know, this act of kindness would uncover one more secret his wife had hidden, one that would change everything he thought he knew about his own life. The next morning arrived with a quiet calm that felt almost unreal. The sky was clear, birds fluttered above the Reynolds estate, and the scent of fresh rain still lingered in the air. Alexander stood outside the servant's house as an ambulance parked nearby. Two paramedics gently carried Amir into the vehicle, his small hand clutching Rahim's fingers. The boy smiled weakly at the millionaire. Will it hurt, Mr. Reynolds? Amir asked softly. Alexander knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Only for a little while, my boy. Then you'll feel better than ever. You'll run, play, and dream again. Amir grinned faintly. Then I'll buy you a toy car, too. The words struck Alexander like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. He smiled through his tears. I'd like that very much. Rahim bowed deeply. Sir, I have no words. You've done more than I ever imagined. My son. He has a chance now. Alexander shook his head gently. No, Rahim. This is not charity. This is me finally doing what I should have done long ago. What she wanted me to do. Rahim's eyes softened. Your wife was an angel, sir. She cared for us more than anyone I've ever known. Alexander nodded. Yes. And I'm beginning to realize she cared for me in ways I never understood. The ambulance doors closed, and as the vehicle drove off toward St. Matthew's Hospital, Alexander stood in silence, the morning wind brushing against his coat. He thought the story had ended there. But that same afternoon, when he visited the hospital to check on Amir, something unexpected happened. Inside the waiting room, the chief pediatric surgeon approached him with a thick file. Mr. Reynolds, I've reviewed the child's records. The surgery is complex but manageable. However, he hesitated. However what? Alexander asked. There's something unusual, the doctor said. The boy's previous medical reports, these were funded anonymously by a Mrs. M. Reynolds. Alexander froze. My wife. Yes, the doctor replied. She had personally donated to the pediatric unit years ago and instructed us to keep treating the child under her name if he ever returned. I thought you knew. Alexander's voice broke. I didn't. I never knew. The doctor handed him the file. Inside were hospital receipts, Margaret's signature, and a letter, sealed in a white envelope with her initials. His hands trembled as he opened it. Greater than, my dearest Alexander. If you are reading this, then I am no longer there to tell you myself. You always believed wealth was measured in numbers, but I discovered that it's measured in hearts. Rahim once saved my life. I fainted near the greenhouse years ago, and he carried me to safety when no one else was around. I never told you because he begged me not to. He feared losing his job for being near the mistress of the house. But I saw his kindness, his dignity. And when I met his son, I saw innocence and hope that reminded me of the child we never had. I helped them not because of charity, but because through them, I found the family we missed. Please, Alex, take care of them when I'm gone. It will heal your heart more than you can imagine. Love, Margaret. Alexander's vision blurred as tears filled his eyes. His wife's words wrapped around his soul like a gentle embrace. She had carried this secret not to deceive him, but to teach him what love truly meant. He pressed the letter to his chest and whispered, "You never stopped teaching me, even after death." Weeks passed. The surgery was successful. Amir recovered faster than anyone expected, his laughter filling the hospital corridors. He began to call Alexander, Uncle Alex, and the sound of it made the millionaire's heart warm in ways it hadn't in years. Rahim, though still humble, could no longer hide his gratitude. "Sir, I cannot repay you. You've given me back my son's life." Alexander placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then repay me by staying with me, not as a servant, but as family." Rahim's eyes widened. "Sir, I can't." "Yes, you can," Alexander interrupted softly. "My wife called you family. That's enough for me." From that day on, the servant's house was repaired, furnished, and filled with laughter. Alexander spent his evenings there often, helping Amir with his schoolwork, sharing stories about Margaret, and rediscovering life's quiet joys. The mansion that once echoed with loneliness now rang with the sounds of love, warmth, and human connection. One evening, as the sun dipped beyond the hills, Alexander stood by Margaret's grave, holding the same photograph he'd found in Rahim's room. The image of his wife and the little boy smiled up at him, eternal and peaceful. He placed the picture beside the gravestone and whispered, "You were right, my love. I found my heart again, right where you left it." And for the first time in many years, the millionaire walked home. Not to his mansion of marble and glass, but to the small servant's house where love lived simply, humbly, and completely.